All right, found what I needed. Wait a minute. Did I just see that the Vancers are in Hilton Head? Now, that is plain rude. They could have invited us to go to Hilton Head with them. I
We,
mean, really, really, really.
we could have.
Oh, look at the rude. Could have, but didn't.
But we had to get away from the heat, so we decided to go north.
Hilton Head, excuse me. Yeah. I see Pack and Care has just joined us. All right, let's start with some announcements here, since we got a few here with us today. Okay, first of all, I want to thank Bobby and Carrie for not inviting us to Hilton Head. We'll remember that. That's something I'm going to remember for a long time. Carrie, what did you do to your hair? You look cool. Oh, not only that, she has hair to do it. Unlike others of us. All right, these are enjoying themselves way too much. Donald Grimm is on tech, by the way. Maureen Sullivan pointed out something we all need to remember, that I think sometimes we take good stuff for granted. Donald is really good at this, and Maureen and her sister were sharing they've gone from time to time to other churches and stuff. It's a disaster. Tech, things break out, things don't work, there's stuff in the middle, and Donald just does it all the time. So we need to remember to not take things for granted, because when you do, then you go someplace else and wonder, like, what is the story? So thank you, Donald. And because we're so proud of you, we'll deduct that from your paycheck. All right, moving right along. Today's the 17th anniversary of All Souls. It started by accident when Serge Cruz and a bunch of others asked if they could have some kind of service at Easter time that wasn't traditional. So we rented a place out here in Jasmine, in the hammocks. We rented a place, and much to my shock, 70 people showed up. And that was a real shock. They're basically former students. And then I thought, okay, we did it. That was nice. And then I got pestered. And people said, hello, could we do this again? Now, if you think I'm ancient now, then I was just about ancient. And I thought, no. So we did something in May. It was hot. We rented the same place again, and about 50 people showed up. And I thought, okay, that was very, very nice. And then we'll let it go. Over the summer, Serge and a bunch of others were agitating, being a real pain. So they got together some others, and they said, let's meet again. So we rented the same spot again. And they asked, how do you do this so you can continue? And I said, well, legally, the way you do that is you gather a group together. They moved to start a congregation of like-minded people, making sure, I said, that like-minded in our case means that you are welcoming everybody. You have nothing against gays, anybody who's ethnic, anybody who's this, that you're welcoming literally everybody. You're not going to pull the same regular stuff. So they said, okay, how do we do that? I said, well, the way you do it is very simple. Somebody moves, we form a congregation. Somebody seconds it, we vote. But I said, you really don't want to do that. And they said, you need somebody to lead you. At this point, everybody looked at me and I said, no. This is not going to work. No. This is not going to work. And here we are 17 years later. It is a ragtag one. Huh?
It's still working.
We had a short interruption a few years ago, and we regathered after 4 months of taking some time off, and we repledged ourselves to continue, and here we are. In 2012, we agreed that being Lone Rangers, wasn't good, so we became an exploratory congregation of the Unitarians. And then after 3 years, I said, what do you need to do to be full? So we went over everything we'd been doing. They said, actually, you don't need to do anything. You've been doing everything all along. So we petitioned the larger group, and in 2015, we were invited in at their General Assembly, and we've been a pain in the neck to everybody ever since. So here we are in All Souls, Miami. We had a real weird thing happen in 2020. In March of 2020, we've been meeting at the JCC after we tried several hotels. And Emily Cardenas suggested we try the JCC. In fact, they were open to it, and that was a very, very interesting time to see. We were at the JCC, and then COVID came. Miami-Dade College closed and the JCC closed, and it turns out I thought we were done for. I mean, that was about it until our techie said, no, we'll go to Zoom, we'll be fine. So in 2 weeks' time, I went from being in class all the time to on Zoom, and then there we go. So we tried All Souls at Zoom. Best thing we ever did. So right now, 17 years later, we meet from time to time over with the twins and Casey and his mom at their house, maybe 4 or 5 times a year, and the rest of the time we're on Zoom. So that's the long and short of it. We've expanded and we have made it very, very, very clear that if you have no money, you're welcomed. If you're poor, you're welcome. If you're gay, you're welcome. You're trans, you're welcome. You're divorced, you're welcome. You're not sure what your ethnic background is, you're welcome. If you have a wild DNA, join the bunch. You are here, that's what we welcome. And so that's where we are 17 years later. And what a ragtag lot. Now, in all of this, we used to meet once a month, and now we're meeting twice a month. And in looking at this, we may be able, now this depends on some things, but we have a full bench. Larry, Michelle, Besa, and Andrea, and myself. That is 5 clergy. That is 5 clergy. I am suggesting out there that we may, just think about this for the future, we may be able to be more than twice a month. I looked at an experiment in January. We're going to meet January 7th, 14th, and 28th. Now, we can do this. The problem is we've got to be sure that our budget stretches, not to increase anybody's, but to be sure that we add another service. So I just need you to think about that when it comes time to talking about budgets, but we got enough clergy to easily do this, to easily meet more often. I would not be preaching that much, but I would be assisting and being kind of the grandmother of the group. I say grandmothers because I never had grandfathers, but I mentioned my grandmothers. I think of my stepfather's mother, and I think of Maria Theresa's mother. And so I would be kind of the grandmother of the group and the coordinator and kind of the glue, and we got everybody else to get a share. And yes, I need to be annoying the ministers, not from the sidelines. I'm right there yelling right in front of them. Yes. So Larry gets first dibs because he's the best. And I always tell Larry that he's the one who gets to call the first shots, and then we divide it up from there. But I want you all to think about that. That's easy to do. Now that we've got such a big bench, but you're going to have to think about how you want to go about that financially. We would need a couple of thousand more to pay for the clergy, not an increase, but what we just ordinarily do. All right, so thinking about all that. Secondly, I want you to know how ignorant I am. It is always a great joy for me to share my ignorance with you. I have a hurricane tracker. And looking at the hurricane tracker, I kept on seeing the word invest. And I kept on wondering why they would call new hurricanes by the name invest. And I said, don't they have names to call hurricanes? Finally, after doing this for several months now, my brain said, why don't you look up what invest means? Little slow. No comments, thank you. Invest means they're investigating because 9 times out of 10, it becomes a major hurricane. Investigating. Right now, we have another 2 on the way. Isn't that lovely? So, 17th anniversary, welcome. We have a full bench. We have possibilities for 2024 we've never had before. I want you to not be shy in inviting people. This is the one place that may be a safe space for many people, especially in Florida. Especially in Florida. So if you know people who are embarrassed because they have no money, so what? If you know people who are down in the dumps, so what? If you know people who feel they don't feel socially awkward, so what? Let me point out, this is not a museum of saints. It is a congregation of real people. We have all kinds of people in 12-step programs. We have all kinds of people on medications. Every one of the clergy has a disability, every one of them. We don't have anybody strutting around here in tight jeans looking like a jock. Thank you very much. So having said that, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. And let us light a memorial candle. And this is another sad time. Number one, we want to remember the people in Maui and the people in Pakistan. Pakistan had a flood a few months ago, and people are still in extremis in Pakistan. Maui will be a disaster for quite a while. Northern Florida, Fort Myers has not dug itself out from last year, and and up in Northern Florida, where they haven't had a hurricane in over 100 years, is a mess. And then the other night, over 2,000 people died in the Atlas Mountains from an earthquake, which had not seen an earthquake in over 100 years. Maui, Pakistan, Northern Florida, the west coast of Florida, and now the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. All kinds of people, all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of religions, all kinds of needing our thoughts. Please, please hold them close as we think of others here and far. Our introit is one that you all love. Let us begin the service. Shalom for the Gypsy Klezmer Orchestra from Barcelona. If you'd be kind enough to join with me in the call to worship, those of you who wish. If you'd read together, those of you who wish. It is now, when we are called as witnesses of the world, to mend it, to change its course, to restore it. It is now, when we are called to act on our values, not to hide, not to fear, but to be bold and loud. It is now that we are called to continue our fight for justice, to organize, to speak up. It is now. Let us gather. Let us give each other courage, and let us worship. For those of you who would, our special music is Life is Worth Living by Justin Bieber, of all people. A great song, believe it or not. You are about to hear some words that many of you may have never heard or said before, because guess what? You haven't heard them lately. These are not from a preacher wearing, where is that thing? Nike Air Jeezy 2 Red Octobers costing $5,600. These words are from a carpenter, extraordinarily poor, did not have assistants following him around, carrying things, did not have mani-pedis, wore a simple garment, simple tunic, wore sandals, was middle-aged, not something like this. I don't know what that is. I see this picture, looks like a salesman of property on the Hamptons. This was not Jesus of Nazareth. I don't know who that thing was. But Jesus of Nazareth did not spend much time with wealthy people. No time, spent time with poor people, sick people. And he spoke a few words here and there that were pictures. They were not long, drawn-out diatribes. And these words certainly screaming at people on YouTube. So Bobby and Carrie are going to read to you some words today I bet you have never heard. So we certainly haven't heard them today, but they're not from preachers and mega churches. They're from a very simple carpenter 2,000 years ago, speaking to peasants in the Galilee. Bobby and Carrie, whoever reads first.
We have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, give your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to the one who asks of you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
Paul was a very, very judgmental individual, but in a strange act of grace, or whatever phrase you wish, he was to write the following in his letter to a small, struggling church in Rome. If you would put up the responsive reading for us, Donald. Donald, if you could pull it up the other way. It has to come down. These are words, by the way, that I have read in my classes, my religion classes, and my most conservative students get very angry because they've never heard these words before. They have never heard these words and get very angry. He said, where is this? And they want to know then why their preachers have never mentioned these words. So they quote a lot of other stuff from Paul, but they never mention these words either. Please read, if you wish, that which is in the lighter indented. Therefore, you are without excuse, whoever you are, when you judge others. For in passing judgment on another, you condemn yourself, because you, the judge, are doing the very same things. We know that God's judgment on those who do such things is in accordance with the truth. Do not imagine, whoever you are, that when you judge those who do such things and yet you do them yourself, you will escape the judgment of God. And another reading, again, have you heard these words at all? From the Sermon on the Plain.
Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. He also told them a parable. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? A disciple is not above the teacher, but every disciple who is fully qualified will be like the teacher. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your neighbor, friend, let me take out the speck in your eye, when you yourself do not see the log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye.
Some words spoken to others from a carpenter 2,000 years ago in the Galilee. Blessings. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts bring us close together, that we may appreciate and affirm the ground of being that keeps us day by day, focused, loving, kind, and caring. Amen. Well, you may have been distracted this week by the following. There is now a new climate change alert out. There are special illnesses associated with climate change. If you've been living in Miami, you have noticed that, yes, it is true, we have 4 seasons: hot, very hot, boiler, and furnace. we have been seams in down here for the last 3 months. The average temperature heat index is between 100 and 110 for 3 months in a row. This evidently brings on incredibly bad illnesses, and there are lots of parts of the planet that do not have air conditioning. And there are whole new categories of illnesses now. Number 2, this week it was announced that 70,000 child care centers are going to close in the United States, leaving 3.2 American children without any child care. We now have just read a study this week that said invasive pests in the United States caused $423 billion in damage last year, bringing pathogens to native fish, plants, and animals. So if you're acting strange, there must have been a pest somewhere around your house. We are delighted to know that Kim from North Korea and Vlad the Impaler from Russia are about to meet somewhere along this month. We've had hurricanes flying at us right and left, invests still alive and well. And I've got great news of you who love automobiles. You'll be glad to know that in the United States, the last great cheap car is due for extinction. Yes, you cannot buy a cheap automobile as of 2025. The last one left on the market, the, where is it? The Mirage. Where is it? I can't, just lost it here. The Mirage X3 is going to be extinct as of 2000. Yes, the Mitsubishi Mirage is going to be extinct as of 2025, a sticker price of $19,000. Guess what, folks? The days of cheap cars are over. It turns out that 4 years ago, nearly half of the entire used car market was made up of cars priced under $20,000. Today, the share of cheap cars has dropped to 12%. My 5-year-old Jeep Wrangler is worth more than I am. Yes, my 5-year-old Jeep Wrangler is worth more than I am. No comments, please. Thank you. The average American paying off a new car at current prices demands 42 weeks of income. Did you hear that? For a new car, 42 weeks of income, up from 33% before the pandemic. The average new car loan in the United States exceeds $750 a month. I'm looking at camels and feet, as in walking. So if you're distracted, I can see why, because you may be missing one of the big things. You may be missing one of the big things in the church, mosque, and synagogue biz. It seems as if in the church, synagogue, and mosque biz, things are grim. The newest report out shows that 30% of American congregations, regardless of religion, are not likely to survive in the next 20 years. Yes, you heard that right, 30%. It turns out that the average attendance across the board, regardless of what you are, is about 65 in weekly attendance with a seating capacity of 200. That's going to really look lovely. I'm thinking of what happened in Port Orange. When I was in Port Orange, the Roman Catholic Church is not immune to this either. There was a very large Roman Catholic church with an Australian priest who used to brag to me regularly about the 8 full masses they had, and they needed more priests. That same church today has only 2 masses, and they're both only a third full. This has affected everybody. You may have heard about the Southern Baptist Convention saying that women are not worthy of being in the pulpit and are excluding congregations right and left. What they did not tell you was that they have been shedding members like dogs shed hair. The Southern Baptist Convention has been losing 500,000 to 1 million members a year. That is correct. They've lost 4 million members in the last couple of years, last 4 or 5 years, and it's declining rapidly. You may have read that the United Methodist Church is losing members to a new breakoff called the Global Methodist Church. After all is said and done, the entire congregations of both, the average size congregation is 38. 38. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Miami, when I first came to Miami in 1995, boasted that they had 880,000 members and they've affected 1.3 million people. I just looked up the same archdiocese today. It has 475,000 people, dropped by half, and only represents 10% of the population of Miami-Dade, Broward, Monroe counties. Yes, you see all these buildings, everybody, but that doesn't mean a thing. What has happened that has caused across the board, a massive, massive decline in attendance and membership? They're not always the same. By the way, just let me point out before I go any further, most Americans are not aware of a couple of things. This may come as a surprise to you. Everybody thinks of the Revolutionary War area, that area of the pilgrims and all the rest of that as big church membership. The average church membership of the population of the United States in the first 300 years, are you ready for this, was 17 to 27% of the population. That was it. What we have in this country is a fixation and addiction on the 1950s. After World War II, which was a horror to Americans that they had never experienced, they had ever experienced or ever thought of before. Remember, we fought on two fronts. Everybody forgets the Asian front. Everybody forgets the fight that we had on the Pacific. We always think of going to Europe, but the Asian front was equally as disastrous, if not worse, for what the shock felt for Americans when they came home. It upset families, upset women who were in the workforce for the first time ever, and they decided they didn't want to leave. All kinds of things got done, and churches were packed in the 1950s. This was an anomaly that people tend to forget. Why are people leaving? I have some ideas I'd like to share with you. I talk to my students, aren't you glad you're going to be graduating from college? My students can't wait to get out of the house. Most of them aren't getting out of the house. Why? Because they can't afford anywhere to go once they get out of the house. You need 2 or 3 roommates. You know what roommates can be like. Oh, that is a joy forever. Yes, 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 yes. Some of my kids are really smart. They go online, they really fill these things out. But most students cannot afford right now to spend $2,000 or more a month on an apartment. Now, let's say you do get a wild job. You are really good at tech, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and you're making $110,000 at the age of 27. Wee-ha! And then you go and you put in this week, and you find out you're not working 40 hours a week because you are young and strong. They're expecting you to work 60 hours a week. Finally, you get home on the weekend, and you think you're going to go out and party Friday night, and what happens? You fall asleep. Why? Because you're exhausted. Oh, that's an embarrassment. Then Saturday morning, you get up to put on some clothes, and guess what? You have no clothes. Why? Because they're dirty. Why? Because then you're working and making your $110,000 a year. You never bother to wash the clothes because your mother isn't there, neither are your sisters. Hello, folks. Your mother isn't going to do your clothes anymore. Then you realize you have no underwear, no clothes, and then you go get something in the refrigerator, and you see, are you ready for this, 1/2 of a pizza slice? Yes, and some old milk. At this point, you realize Saturday is going to mean you're going to have to go food shopping. What a rude awakening that is, and you have to wash your clothes. Finally, after washing clothes and food shopping, comes Sunday, you sleep in, and you decide you don't want to do anything. Boom, it's Monday. And work, 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 work. Do you see church, mosque, synagogue, or any kind of fellowship anywhere here, folks? Do you see that anywhere? Somebody, by the way, may decide that they're tired of roommates and tired of being by themselves, and they may want to try, drum roll, dating. Aren't you glad you're not on dating? Maybe some of you are on Bumble. Anybody here on Bumble? If you do, I don't want to hear it. Don't tell them. Yes, Bumble and the other dating apps. Yeah, dating apps have gone through a big thing. Bumble. By the way, how do you think college people meet each other today? Don't think they meet each other by you can't meet each other in class. That's not allowed and taboo. Most of my college students, if they're dating at all, are dating because of friends' introductions, somebody met through friends' family gatherings, yes, or 68% dating apps. Yes. So if you're not washing underwear that doesn't exist anymore because it's all in a pile in your clothes and trying to eat more than a pizza slice, how are you going to start dating when you're exhausted? And yes, you decide to go with some friends to a bar and somebody comes up to you and says, hi, you. Oh, that's not going to work, folks. That's not going to work either. It's Sunday afternoon. Did we mention church, mosque, or synagogue? Where is that in all of this? And you think, okay, that's just a week. This is not, and you notice this is on a continual loop, a loop, a loop, a loop. Work habits are shocking college graduates and people into the early 30s. They cannot believe this is happening and happening. How do you even find somebody in all of this, by the way? How do you find somebody? Number two, one of the things that I was reading about was very embarrassing. A lot of people today say they don't go to church because they're embarrassed because they don't have any money. These big mega churches, folks, talk a lot about money. They talk about how much you owe. If you want God to make you wealthy, you need to give God money. The prosperity gospel is alive and well. But what if you don't have any money? What if you're loaded to the gills with college loans? What if you realize you had to buy a car and a used car is costing you as much as a new car used to cost 6 years ago? What if you're trying to make ends meet and you don't have any money? Do you want to go to a church, mosque, or synagogue and feel ashamed because you don't have anything to put into the plate? Really? I'm finding out that the latest studies show there's a whole swath of American people who live paycheck to paycheck and they just simply don't have much money. And they go to church. And, you know, a lot of churches, by the way, I remember when I was in Fall River, and Port Orange. I don't know if any of you in Port Orange remember this. I had people from another church come and visit because they were doing something. And afterwards, I was told, Kenneth, why do your people dress so disrespectfully? And I said, what do you mean? And I was told and I got this right, like, well, your people come in jeans and shorts and cutoffs. And I said, yeah, well, guess what? This is a beach community. What do you expect? I said, we threw an 8 o'clock service in so those who wanted to go to the beach could grab church and communion and take off. So we would often at 8 o'clock have surfboard stuff out front. We'd have people in jams and stuff come to church, and I was glad they made it on the way. Larry Deach can tell you about this because his congregation was on the beach. And so I'm saying, you know, but I got ragged by people saying your church people dress disrespectfully. I'm glad they even showed up. Seriously, what is this stuff? Well, you have to dress a certain way. Well, maybe you do, but not in this congregation. I mean, we can even see you on Zoom if you want to see us. People don't have money. People are young kids, schedules are killing them. And here's another one, which I was surprised about. A lot of churches don't welcome you if you are divorced. I wasn't aware of that. That was one of the biggest complaints about people going. They said, I came from, and they list several denominational backgrounds. You could probably think of them. And they felt they were no longer welcome if you were divorced. Well, guess what? A lot of us have been divorced. And that has never been a stop for anybody else. Good heavens. Moving right along. Then there are other things. Not only is workism a tough thing, not only do people not feel welcome because of money or the way they wear, what the clothes they wear, or the way they wear their hair. Yes, there are people who are not welcome because they wear their hair in different styles. Who cares? Evidently, some congregations do. Some of us don't have hair. Can I point that out, by the way, if they're talking about hair? If you want to wear a hair wild, share it. I'll be glad to wear some wild hair. Finally, there's another thing that's come up. What are we watching at Christianity today? Do they ever say what kind of Christianity? No. All the media says is Christians. So we get the following kind of stuff. Christians, clergy in Texas and North Carolina are featured regularly on media where somebody gets up and says in one of those kinds of accents that I know Jesus and I know the Bible, and I am going to tell you what the God says. And God says those homosexuals are bad and evil, and it is Satan. It is Satan that is after your souls. Oh, my. Somebody said I do that too well, that accent. I mean, you should hear the stuff that comes out. Did we not read this morning? Did you not see those readings from Jesus? I don't know what Jesus they're talking about, but you have words of Jesus right in front of you. Why do you see a speck in somebody else's eye when you have a log in your beam and own? Turn the other cheek. Let me read you something. You're going to love this. On NPR, some Trumpified evangelicals are now rejecting the teachings of Jesus as weak. Russell Moore, former head of the Southern Baptist Convention, told NPR multiple pastors have responded that congregants have objected to their preaching Christ's Sermon on the Mount, saying, love your enemies. It's a liberal talking point. Evangelicals are saying, love your enemies is a liberal talking point. That's weak. Get something else. What are these churches? What are talk to me about this. So you see right-wing preachers screaming about homosexuals, screaming about transgenders, screaming about all kinds of things. You're going to hell. By the way, did you ever see any humility lately? Any love? Any compassion? Any turning the other cheek? Any asking, how can we talk to each other? Have you seen any of that? Mosques, synagogues, churches, extremism. Is it any wonder why people are departing? The average congregant's age in the Southern Baptist Convention is 58 and white. Only 8% of their entire denomination is 30 years of age and under. People are not joining up. Work, feeling they have no money, feeling they're not welcome because of who they are. They're divorced. They may have the wrong look of face, wrong look of hair. Where does this come from? And then religion now is identified as Christian. It's all Christian. It doesn't. The media doesn't say you what kind of Christian. So people are not sure what's out there. See all of the screaming and yelling and judgmentalism. They said, that's Christian. Count me out. Count me out. Oh, and then let's have the tidbits of Jesus, preachers, and sneakers. Did you read that article? This will be the final turnoff. Ben Kirby is a devout evangelical. And he started noticing things on the TV. And I'm not going to mention the minister's names because I don't want to get myself in trouble. I'll probably get sued since this is what happens. But it's in the article. One of the preachers was wearing a $3,600 Gucci jacket. Somebody was wearing a $1,200 fanny pack. A fanny pack for $1,200. One minister in Miami was wearing a $2,500 crocodile belt. Kirby asked the question, God forbid, is it okay to get rich off of preaching about Jesus? Who, by the way, was dirt poor and had no money. Did anybody happen to notice that? Did not drive a Lamborghini, did not drive a BMW, walked on his feet. Did anybody happen to notice that? And did not have, where is this thing? And did not own a pair of Nike Air GZ2 Red Octobers worth $5,600 as he was walking around the Galilee talking to peasants. Just for what it's worth. Kirby writes, pastors wearing oversized glasses, tight jeans, pricey jackets, who look like they belong to your local craft cocktail watering home, not trying to minister to a congregation. Kirby said he's been to churches where there is a volunteer designed to hold the minister's Bible. What? The minister can't hold the Bible themselves? He often writes pastors have private entrances, reserved parking spots, security details, so you're even a gaggle of personal assistants. Could you imagine me with a gaggle of personal assistants? Yeah, to gag me, probably. I can see that. All right. And yes, there was a pastor caught wearing Nike Air GZ2 Red Octobers worth $5,600. You see this stuff, and you ask, what's it all about? What is what we're supposed to be doing? What is this all about? Really? Originally, congregations, Jewish, Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, First, they were to provide a framework for meaning making. What does it mean to be? How do we talk about what does it mean to be things? Secondly, congregations are supposed to deal with rituals. I've had several intense people dying this week who related us into one shape or another, and rituals are coming up. In fact, one of my classmates from Atlantic City High School died unexpectedly, and the class asked me, do you think we can do something? We need you to look at this. How do you create communities? Where do we have a chance to meet each other? You know as well as I do, most of us don't know our neighbors. So we have to make a community where we try to know each other, even if it's online. And finally, there's some of us that are going to try and work for prophetic action, trying to do social justice the best way we can. Now, Jim Davis and Michael Graham have been writing all about the great dechurching. And they said, what we need to do is have a great revival and remind people of their sin and their evil and their wretchedness. One of the questions I always asked was, if in the conservative mind, God creates everything and God is all-knowing, God had to know what God was going to create. If you're all-knowing, it means you know the future. So if you know the future, then why would you create such a mess? And they get mad at people in the process. So I'm not sure we need a great awakening. I think what we need to do is say, maybe it's a good time to accept the fact that maybe some dechurching is good, because whoever Jesus was, this is not what we're getting today. Whatever it is, it's a lot of hate, a lot of anger, a lot of judgmentalism, but I don't see love, compassion, and caring to most of us who go through life not with sunshine, lollipops, and roses. Some of us have good days. That's easy. But what happens when the days are long and bad and hard? Who's there? Who's to offer meaning? Who's to offer rituals? Who's to genuinely care? Jim Davis and Mike Graham, as I said, are complaining. And I want to read this to you. American churches too often have been content to function as a kind of vaguely NGO spiritual organization of detached individuals who meet together for religious services that inspire them, provide practical life advice, and offer positive emotional experiences. He thinks that's bad. I think that's exactly what we're about. Somebody without wanting your wallet, somebody without trying to insult you and humiliate you. How do we, in fact, try to bring us who are detached and living different spots together from time to time to care, ask meaning, to nurture, to listen, to learn? How do we offer practical advice? How do we offer positive emotional experiences? And how do we learn from each other, from our different backgrounds? A theologian who I will not mention because it's embarrassing when he writes, pastoral care has become obsessed with personal wounds. You're darn straight it has. He thinks this is wrong. Really? Pastoral care has become obsessed with personal wounds of people in advanced industrial societies who've discovered that their lives lack meaning. Well, guess what? There's got to be some place that genuinely loves and cares for us, as messed up as we can be, as broken as we can be, as imperfect as we can be, and that's all right. Some place that asks us how do we support each other, care for each other, love each other, and still hold hands in good times and bad. And that is what All Souls is all about. All Souls is for all souls, that all souls can be. Pastoral care, finding meaning, finding out who we are, and caring for each other. That's what it's about. And maybe if other churches are full of hate and stuff like that, maybe we need some dechurching, some demosking, some desynagoguing, till we get back to our original caring, our original succor, our original love. That's what I would like to suggest. We don't need preachers and sneakers. We need some humility, some seeing the log in our own eye, some turning the other cheek. And if somebody asks you for your shirt, give them your jacket too. Some thoughts as we begin the fall. Some thoughts as we begin the fall. Amen. The archaeologists tell us 10 to 12,000 BCE, in what we now call Turkey, wheat was being farmed and grown for the first time. It's not kind of like the wheat we had today, but you get the idea. And amongst the poor, it was understood you offered bread and cup as a welcome. This will get passed down through other cultures. And Jesus of Nazareth and his Jewish friends and neighbors will borrow this from the Canaanites, who borrowed it from the Hittites, who borrowed it and who borrowed it and borrowed it. And you'll notice, if you ever pay attention to Jesus's ministry, he was always having bread and wine, having meals. We always focus on the Last Supper, but let me remind everybody, people didn't know it was going to be the Last Supper when they had that supper. If you really read the Gospels again and again and again, the meal was the essential time of saying welcome and hello. And so we too offer simple bread and simple cup, simple flat bread and a simple cup, to symbolically welcome one and all. Everybody is welcome into a very, very simple meal, to show that we are all in this together, this strange mixed affair we call life. And so we borrow some words that I ask you to share with me. And they remind us of how we all are together, regardless of our age, our gender, regardless of our mixed DNAs. I ask you to promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And again, repeat after me. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, and sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. And if you would read with me this concluding prayer that Michelle introduced to us, and read it together if you would. May those who perpetually pour receive. May those who constantly carry discover what it feels like to be supported. May those hidden behind walls of silence find safe places to speak. May those who fight for others encounter those who will fight for you. Amen. And now, as only we can do, an Irish and Hindu blessing combined. May the road rise to meet you, and may the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. Go in peace. Amen. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Donald, for tech. Thank you, John and Christine. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Bobby and Carrie. Yes, yes, yes. We love when you read. Pat Sullivan, good morning to you. Rick and Judy. Tell Rick we're thinking of Judy because we're back. A lot of you have back problems today. Danny Sorkin, good morning. Cecilia, Cindy and Larry, Serge, Pat Can Care, Amelia Schweitzer, good morning, good morning, good morning. Have a good and safe week. Thank you, Chris Diaz, for being with us from North Miami. Blessings and peace to you all. We see you soon. All righty. Bye-bye now, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, Sister Nose.
Take care, everybody. Have a good Sunday.
Bye, Serge. Bye,
Bye, Serge.
Daniel. Bye, Pat. Bye, Kate.